quite possibly the dumbest column ever published in the history of America. Last week here on the Cain Podcast, we told you about the increasingly tenuous story of the Duke BYU volleyball game, where one Duke black volleyball player claims she was subjected to racial slurs and taunting, that she was berated by the student section at BYU, that she was subjected to multiple uses of the N-word. It went viral. It made national news. It was covered by ABC, CNN, ESPN, NPR, and it was taken immediately as truth. But nobody took it to the absurd heights as did USA Today. USA Today published a column by a man by the name of Mike Freeman. If you want to look him up on Twitter, he goes by Mike Freeman NFL. Mike Freeman at one time reported for the New York Times, and then in a short blip of a moment for the Indianapolis Star. More on that in a moment. He went on to Bleacher Report, and today he appears to be writing at USA Today. And he managed an accomplishment inside of a news story full of inanity, full of irrationality, devoid of reason, full of nothing but accusation. He managed in that environment to publish the dumbest possible column that one could imagine. And I thought it instructive for us to go through the column here together today, not simply to take a baseball bat to the piñata of Mike Freeman, but also to illustrate, and I think this is important, the rhetorical tricks and tools, the logical flaws, the limits of reasoning that are actually present in almost all media stories, the tricks that are used to disguise agenda in the piñata of journalism. The agenda is the candy all inside that papier-mâché, colorful Mexican target. It's your bat that has to burst it to see that it's not journalism, but it is actually lies. But the bat that you need is reason and logic, and I want to share with you all of the tricks and the lies shared impossibly in one column by Mike Freeman in USA Today. The headline reads, "Right-wing conspiracy theory involving Duke volleyball player is absurd." The first paragraph reads as follows. "It's something you may not have noticed. It's like QAnon or mass voter fraud. It's another conspiracy. This one, that Duke volleyball player Rachel Richardson, who said she was called multiple racial slurs while playing a game at BYU, made the entire thing up." All right. Opening paragraph. What we have here is the rhetorical trick. Communication is broken down into, logic, rhetoric. Rhetoric is your ability to persuade. Logic is the ability of a human mind to connect ideas together to make sense in a reasoned pattern. What you have here is a rhetorical trick. It's called argument from association. He immediately, within the second paragraph, equates, simply by referencing them, the doubt over Rachel Richardson's story at BYU to QAnon or mass voter fraud. In his mind, those are clear conspiracies. And so he immediately puts this story into the same literal paragraph as QAnon. But here's the trick, okay? Here's what's fascinating. The conspiracy this time is to, in his estimation, not believe an evidence-free claim. We talked about this in the last episode of the Cain Podcast. You should go back and listen to exactly how faulty this allegation is. It contains no corroboration. No one else in a stadium full of thousands heard the racial slur uttered. In a stadium at a Division I NCAA sporting event full of teen cameras, a live stream, thousands of kids with cell phones in their hands managed to record the most verboten word in the English language. But in Freeman's estimation, it's a conspiracy not to believe this evidence-free claim. He writes, "What the conspiracy theory essentially all comes down to is one thing. No one heard Richardson being called a slur. It's a conspiracy that no one heard the alleged slur. He writes, the belief suddenly is that microphones pick up every word in the arena or student section, or that cameras are all seeing and knowing like many one-eyed gods. He is telling you that it's a conspiracy to believe that thousands of sets of ears and thousands of cameras and microphones not picking up the use of a record-scratching racial slur, the N-word, not believing or doubting that it happened in that environment and not taking a single individual's word that the experience occurred is a conspiracy. And it's a conspiracy associated to QAnon. You know, in my day, I'd say a week ago, I thought a conspiracy was an evidence-free claim. But today, a week later, according to the very, very special mind of Mike Freeman, a conspiracy is if you don't buy, if you won't buy an evidence-free claim. Then he starts to lay it on with the rhetorical tricks, with the irrationality. Here they are. You know who else believes Rachel Richardson? South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley, who canceled her program's series against BYU. Staley believes he or she wouldn't put her reputation or that of her program on the line. So South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley, who has no firsthand knowledge of the incident, canceled her series against BYU. And that is somehow an validation of the allegation of Rachel Richardson. Dawn Staley, more than likely, read the original column of Mike Freeman, USA Today, purporting this allegation as truth, or saw the tweets of Roland Martin or Jamel Hill, or saw the reports on ABC or ESPN or NPR. And that Dawn Staley gobbled up, ingested, inhaled the initial lie is somehow validation, and acted on it, is somehow validation of the lie. This is called an appeal to authority, by the way. It is your first rhetorical trick. Second rhetorical trick, an appeal to victimhood. Freeman writes, in many ways, this story is about race and how black people have constantly proved or had to prove we're not criminals or liars, that we don't commit mass voter fraud, or that we get jobs only because of affirmative action. We have to prove, as Richardson does, that we heard what we heard, that we saw what we saw. To many of these people, Richardson's words don't mean anything. She automatically cannot be trusted. Believe her, or you're a racist. Believe her, or your disbelief is a crime not just against Richardson, but all black people. I know he'll never understand this because there's limits to his IQ. But Mike Freeman doesn't understand that anyone, regardless of race, making an allegation carries the burden of proof of proving that allegation. You do not get to be simply believed because you're black or because you're white. You must prove your allegation regardless of race. Sorry, we don't hand out that card. You don't get that card. It'd be a nice one to have, wouldn't it? In society, my word shall never be trusted or never to be doubted. And what a powerful card it would be to hold. It's a card Freeman's attempting to play. He literally is the dumbest person to ever wield a pen, or perhaps more likely, or a combination thereof, he thinks you're the dumbest person ever to have lived. See, because what he's telling you is, he plays this power card, and you must ignore the lack of audio-visual forensic evidence, nor any, and I mean any, eyewitness or audible testimony that this happened. That you simply must believe the allegation uttered inside a stadium of thousands, or you're a racist. What a powerful card, and one played successfully. Third trick, argument again from association. As he opened the column, he now returns to this trick. He writes, yet this story is remarkable for another reason. Most of the people calling Richardson a liar are from the right-wing media ecosystem or have MAGA in their Twitter bios. Whoa. Scary. Semi-fascist, I guess. These are the same people who for 5 years ignored facts. They believe that Hollywood liberals eat babies, or the Parkland students were crisis actors, or that JFK is alive, or is it RFK? Something or someone with a K in it. Cute writing. They ignored the 30,000 lies told by the man they worship. They believed the Russia investigation was a hoax. It was. That COVID was a hoax. That global warming is a hoax. What does any of this have to do with whether the N-word was uttered inside a stadium of thousands at BYU? Nothing. Absolute nothing. It is an argument from association. Those people believe these things that I say are conspiracies, and those people question this claim, so I deem that also a conspiracy. From that, we go to this, and this is real interesting. He writes, the other conspiracy theory is that she misheard the word. That is a word you don't mishear. You certainly don't mishear it more than once. You could never mishear the N-word. I got like a camel brain, I think, or something. It goes back over 6 months. This time, I think it only had to go back 12. Colorado Rockies baseball game. Mascot nickname Dinger. Man in the stands behind home plate yells Dinger numerous times, attempting to call the mascot over. I think he had a child with him. Yelling Dinger. Numerous people, not around him, but within earshot of the camera and microphone, and I believe perhaps a player on the field, believed that he yelled the N-word. Misheard Dinger for the N-word. Same thing takes place as today. Story goes viral, claims made, and then meekly, quietly, a little bit later after an investigation, the Rockies reveal, again with forensic evidence and common sense, that he wasn't yelling the N-word as loud as he could at a stadium. Look, I won't deny there exist racists in society, but there are hardly any, and I don't know of one off the top of my head, nor a single incident off the top of my head that was real, of that racist being that bold. He was yelling Dinger. Someone misheard that he used the N-word. That just happened. Not the destruction of Mike Freeman's argument, but that just happened at a major sporting event in the news cycle within the past 12 months. Now it gets really rich, so hang in here because now it gets really fun. With no rebuttal, sitting in a room in front of a computer, no one to actually force him into insecurity, Freeman's argument begins to collapse in on itself. In a fit of insecurity, he starts to flail. And then he reverts to ad hominem attacks. Don't attack the argument, attack the people. And in this case, all the people. Here we go. Have fun with this. Quote, these people also ignore BYU's own past. We could go back decades or even to its origins, but a report from BYU itself last year said students of color felt isolated and unsafe. Ad hominem attack. Let's indict the university at large. BYU's racist. We're just getting warmed up. All of this, and we haven't even gotten into what happens in the rest of the state of Utah. A 10-year-old black girl died by suicide last year after bullying. In a separate situation, the Justice Department detailed a horrific pattern of racist abuse where black and Asian students at a school district in Farmington were harassed for years, and the complaints of parents and students were ignored. Okay, now Utah's racist, the state. Remember, we're still trying to decide whether or not the N-word was used, with zero forensic evidence or eyewitness testimony inside of a volleyball stadium between Duke and BYU. But now we're tail spinning out of control into, whoa, BYU's racist. And also, you know what? The state of Utah is racist. And I'm not done. Here we go. The University of Utah said it received complaints of racism on its campus. On August 16th, a black faculty member said he was called the N-word while waiting for a train to leave the school. Oh, so now a different university, not BYU, but another university, also in the state of Utah, they're racist. We're not done. I'm telling you, the flailing is magnificent. Multiple Utah Jazz fans. Oh, now we're professional NBA basketball fans of the Utah Jazz. were banned indefinitely last year after making racist and vulgar comments towards the family of Grizzlies guard Ja Morant. Yeah. Well, I don't know if the word, just believe her. I mean, sure, microphones pick up everything. Oh, they're all going to protect each other. BYU will clear itself. And you know what, anyway? You're all racist. Who? All of you. BYU, Utah, that university over there, University of Utah, and Jazz fans, too. You're all racist. Matter of fact, now we're at it, everybody reading's racist. Everybody in America's racist. World's racist. World's against me, Mike Freeman, in the limited powers of my brain and reasoning. This is one of the most special needs columns ever written. And by the way, it's also worth mentioning that there are so many victims in this, and right now it doesn't look like Rachel Richardson makes a top 5 list. How about this? The student that was identified as the perpetrator of this crime that did not exist was a special needs student. Somewhere they think possibly on the autism scale, Asperger's syndrome, who approached her after the game because he thought she was one of her friends. She was wearing blue and white, BYU and Duke of the same color. He was the one that was banned for life. Until, I don't know if his suspension has been lifted, until forensic evidence, actual journalism revealed he was scrolling his phone, not yelling the N-word while Richardson was serving. He's a victim. The reputation of BYU, Utah, the state of Utah, apparently Utah Jazz fans, they're also victims. You know who else is a victim? How about Mormons? What are you getting at, Mike, as you spin it out in general and cast your net wider and wider? Are you saying that all Mormons are racist? Sounds kind of bigoted, Mike, targeted at Mormons. You know who else is a victim? Black people. Black people who have legitimate claims of racial abuse. Black people who will have to suffer from you being the boy who cried wolf every single time. Every single time. Because then legitimate complaints of racism will be met with appropriate skepticism based upon the crap that's been spun out to them for years. You've made black Americans the victim. You've made everybody the victim. Because you're the victim. You didn't write this column to defend Rachel Richardson. You wrote this column, this meek attempt to defend your initial gullibility in buying the claim of Rachel Richardson. There's a really, really good Twitter thread by a guy who produced actual journalism in Utah, where he went in and he analyzed the whole case from start to finish, including video. He has video up on his Twitter feed. His name is Andre Hutchins. It's at AC_Hutchins. And, I mean, you can watch each service of Rachel Richardson. You can watch it and see if you hear anything. He goes on and on. He talks about everybody from the national personalities at ESPN, everybody that perpetuated, that made this go into virality, right? Including her godmother, Richardson's godmother, who is just, by the looks of her tweets, in a top 5 list of horrible human beings. But he's charitable, is Hutchins. In the end, he's charitable after he goes through his journalistic recap of it. He says, this is what I think actually happened. He said, if I can get to this, something fascinating. He said, conclusion, I believe that Rachel Richardson thought she heard what sounded like a racial slur while on the court during the game. Her actions of informing the Duke staff and the BYU's subsequent decision to station a police officer next to the student section, and BYU sent 4 ushers into the stands. Remember, BYU was thrown under the bus. They took action in real time. Also, a Duke usher, a Duke person, a Duke monitor was sent to the student section, as was a law enforcement officer. Nobody heard a single slur uttered. None of those people. None of that did. But it does indicate that Richardson immediately reported this to her team and might have actually believed that something was said to her. Not a single person, writes Hutchins, at the game, in the arena, or on the floor heard it. Not even Richardson's own teammates. And the game was televised live. Dozens of cameras stationed throughout the arena. Not just TV cameras, but security cameras. Game footage cameras for the coaches. Cell phones for the kids. Not one camera picked up the unruly racist behaviors or slurs. Here's what Hutchins says. I do not believe Richardson made up the initial claims during the game. But once her godmother, her god-awful godmother, decided to take this story public and embellish the allegations from what Rachel had initially reported, the story took on a life of its own. And then Rachel decided to play along. She wasn't going to throw her godmother under the bus. She was far too much attention from the national media for her to back down. And as an individual considers herself a social justice advocate, she could not let this opportunity pass without bringing attention and awareness to what many in this country believe is a major racist issue among white people. And what better target of scrutiny and anti-racist education than BYU, mostly white Mormon school? I think he nails it. I can't say she set out to perpetuate a hoax. I think she probably heard something like Dinger, or the students were yelling the volleyball players' first names. Nikki was the name of one of the students. Or Net. Who knows what could have been misheard? And then she said something, and everybody in the stadium did what you would hope they would do. They acted upon it, but they could find nothing to back it up. And then she tells her godmother afterward, and her godmother, horrible human being that she is, explodes it into virality. And then media members, horrible human beings that they are, accept it at face value as a springboard to project their own virtue, not as pursuers of the truth. And in the end, that's what we have to learn. Let me just give you one more part of this worst column, perhaps, in American history. Freeman says in here, the one piece of evidence that he offers in support of his belief of Rachel Richardson is that she told her dad immediately afterwards. He essentially makes the argument, why would she lie to her father so quickly and emotionally? He writes, she went on to describe to her father what happened. The moment is helpful because it's contemporaneous. It shows Rachel's mindset immediately afterward. That moment also leads to 3 different points. So what he's saying now is that this verbal slur, this alleged verbal slur, is of the same nature as rape. Rape being a he said, she said allegation. Contemporaneous emotional testimony can sometimes lend validity to an allegation. He writes that she told her dad went on CNN, she never stopped her dad, repeat the lie, and somehow this is evidence. He writes, to many people, Richardson's words doesn't mean anything. She cannot be trusted. He's playing the card of believe all women, believe all victims, believe all black people. No, we don't believe anyone. That was a perverted moral and logical concept when it was employed during the Me Too movement. You don't simply believe, you ask for proof. You don't simply doubt either. You stay open and you ask for proof. And here he's equating rape, he said, she said, to an allegation made in a stadium of thousands. This wasn't the N-word whispered. It wasn't a private crime with only 2 potential witnesses. It was the N-word yelled across a stadium, thousands of ears and microphones. His column is an absolute tour de force in stupidity and or dishonesty. And as much as I disrespect Mike Freeman, in the end, it's not about Mike Freeman. I told you I'd return to this. Mike Freeman is a proven liar. He's a proven liar. What I mean by that is when he left the New York Times, as I alluded to this, for the Indianapolis Star, before his hiring was made official, it was revealed he lied about graduating from the University of Delaware. He lied. He lied. He's a liar. But what's important is not that he's a lying slimeball, okay? Not that he is, or Dave Zirin of The Nation, whose their skin literally glistens with slime, and their bodies are usually in the shape of a ball. It's not that they're slime balls and that they have lies, but they have no accountability, and they're not alone. They all, meaning the vast majority of the media, employ these rhetorical tricks that I just laid out, employ these lies, and disappear into the night when it's time for accountability. This story has fallen apart. No evidence, and no airtime, no minutes devoted on CNN, on ABC, on ESPN, on NPR, to the actual truth. Minutes upon minutes upon minutes on First Take, Roland Martin, tweets, USA Today. Minutes upon minutes upon minutes of conclusion and judgment. And for that matter, quite honestly, defamation. Yes, defamation of the institution of BYU. As journalists, when you're dealing with a public figure, if you're guilty of defamation, you have to have a reckless disregard for the truth. This was absolutely reckless dishonesty in regards to the truth, with a trail of victims, which will eventually also include not just the special needs student that was made the perpetrator, not just BYU, not just the University of Utah, not just Jazz fans, not just the state of Utah, but Mormons, and not just Mormons, Black Americans who you've now put into the position of the boy who cried wolf, but also eventually the trail of victims of your dishonesty, of your lack of accountability will include Rachel Richardson. Because when the whole world knows this was a hoax and this was a lie, she'll be the one left standing there as the liar. When the truth is, the liar is the one that devoted 0 minutes to accountability. The truth is, the liar are all these institutions symbolized by Mike Freeman of USA Today. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain Podcast for full episodes right now.